Hello, this is Brian from the Bad Manners Podcast. I'll be reacting to my second video from Dad Mode and Dark Mode. I enjoyed reacting to the first one, and the title of his most recent one did catch my attention. The title is No Wonder Men Are Still Lost. The voices helping you are using you. The second part of that title did hook me in. I'm curious to see what he thinks are those helping voices that are in fact just harming men. So let's get into it.
Is with massive platforms out there that are telling men exactly what they want to hear, right? About the system, about how men are getting a raw deal, and how everything is designed to keep them broke and without any real power or agency in their lives. And men are running towards those voices. They're running towards them because for the first time, someone is finally putting words to what they've been feeling for so long. They're saying the quiet part out loud. They're saying what they've been thinking. And I've been on both sides of that. I understand that completely. But here's what I want you to think about. What if those voices are part of the same system they're telling you to fight? I'm talking about controlled opposition. You probably have heard that term before. But if you haven't, there is a concept that's called controlled opposition, and once you really understand how it works, everything really starts to make sense. So let's put flesh on bone. I want to get into that because these guys, they blow up because they say things that are actually true.
Well, that is the most dangerous form of propaganda. Not necessarily saying these influencer propagandists, but traditionally the most effective propaganda is the kind that contains an element of truth to it. This can manifest in a lot of different ways. Sometimes you see it as an extension of a kind of Mott and Bailey fallacy, where they present the truth and then they offer you something that is supposed to be an extension to that truth, but it's not actually related to it, but it's something that's in their best interest. So this is a good start so far.
Men are losing respect in their own homes and in the family court system. The culture has shifted tremendously to where men, they can work to the bone. They can work hard their whole life and still feel like they're treading water. And when a man, he finally hears someone put words to what he's been carrying around and really couldn't explain, well, of course he's all in at that point. Anyone would be.
If you are wandering in the desert in search of truth, the first time you come across a drop of it, there is going to be a very natural tendency to overreact to its presence and do your best to imbibe it in its entirety. Naturally, this makes a person extraordinarily exploitable. And it looks like he's going to get into what the nature of that exploitation looks like.
But here's the question worth sitting with. Why does the system allow these guys to get that big?
All right, before he posits his answer, I'm going to give what my initial thoughts are. Right out of the gate, I have a concept coming to mind. I am going to bastardize it, so forgive me, anybody watching. It was an idea communicated by C.S. Lewis. It's something to the effect that he would rather be ruled by robber barons, because at least they will leave you alone to some degree, whereas the moral busybodies will not. The system, especially among the elected classes, they are more akin to those robber barons. They're interested in perpetual personal enrichment. And of course that's not a desirable state of affairs. We do see the average person suffering with like the affordability issue that he pretty much referenced earlier when he mentioned men feeling like they're treading water despite working their entire lives. So within that context, there's going to be not a very hard level of censorship that really tries to clamp down on these men that are spreading this message. Because so long as it's not interfering with their cash cows, it's not really within anything they're concerned about. But that's the system as it concerns the uppermost elite levels. There's other systems to consider, like education institutions, or certain levels of those governmental institutions that do have ideologues within them. That is when you would find the moral busybodies that would be actively invested in stamping out any rising dissent against their ideology. And the truth as things stand is, I've spoken about it at length, the leftist march through the institutions has been phenomenally effective. It's why their propaganda has so thoroughly demoralized the population. It's just they're not controlling all of those levers of power, and most particularly not controlling those ones that are currently occupied by what are in effect the robber barons.
If they were genuinely a threat to these people that are running things, they wouldn't have hundreds of millions of views and a verified Wikipedia page. The system would have buried them a long time ago.
Okay, so he did correctly identify that if they were a genuine threat to the cash cow that, current American politics really is, yes, they would have been stamped out immediately. A lot of what you've seen in recent times, trying to appeal to certain characteristics that people have gotten across, particularly to young men, that there's certain things that they should be trying to do, like amassing wealth, working on yourself. None of those are really interfering with the elites in any way whatsoever. Now, if those type of individuals started threatening to occupy actual positions of power, i.e. getting elected to office, and their ideology, it would in some way bring an end to that gravy train, then you would see that person get stamped out very, very quickly. But I like so far, I'm liking this video. I'm glad I'm reacting to it, but let's continue.
Just think about if you've ever seen in the Hunger Games where President Snow, he has this conversation with Seneca Crane, right? Where he essentially lays out exactly how population control works. He says, hope. It is the only thing stronger than fear. A little hope is effective. A lot of hope is dangerous. So he's right there. He's saying the quiet part out loud. He's describing a real operating principle. You don't control people by stripping all hope away from them. You manage hope by giving just enough, right? Just enough to keep someone engaged, to keep them watching, to keep them feeling like change is on the horizon. Something is about to change.
If you make them feel like they still have some kind of agency or some kind of sense of power over the situation, that's effectively their vehicle for hope. And a lot of people still believe this, of course. We're operating within a constitutional republic. We use democracy, so there's the belief that those votes, they matter. For people to go out on the streets and protest, they believe that what they're doing matters, so that they continue to have some sense of agency in it. And that hope effectively discourages any more significant actions that would disrupt things as they currently are. And do note that this commentary doesn't mean I'm encouraging some kind of more severe upending of the system or anything like that. It's just an obligation that so long as people feel like they're enfranchised to some degree, they are far less likely to seek the upending of the existing system. So if they lost that hope and they understood that it's not going to change, then it produces an entirely different call to action.
While never giving enough hope to make them feel like they can actually do something about their situation. So controlled opposition, it runs on that exact principle. It's this.
Controlled opposition runs on the principle that if you give credence to that, let's say, person or entity or institution, and that institution is in no way working against the interests of those that are currently enjoying the benefits of the way things are now, then it is controlled because it is in no way actually opposition to what they're doing.
Balance of fear and hope. And a lot of these voices, they sound like freedom. They channel all of that male anger and aggression and frustration, and they funnel it straight into a comment section or in a paid platform, right? The energy, it goes in and nothing actually changes. So they redirect all of that to those things for a profit. And I'll give you one example, a personal example. Andrew Tate, right? Back in 2021, 2022, I resonated with a lot of what he was talking about when it came to the position of the average man in this world and navigating this world, what it's like for him. And he was putting to words things that I had already been thinking. So I was in sales. I was in I wasn't where I wanted to be professionally, and then also in my personal life, I wanted to have more money. I wanted to have more status. I wanted to have, a selection of more attractive women. And so, yeah, I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I joined Hustlers University, which he eventually renamed The Real World. So yeah, I paid for it. It was like $50 a month.
Well, his title of the video, I think he's getting more specific now. If a person is actually extracting resources from you in the form of cash, then you must disabuse yourself of any notion that this is being done for altogether altruistic reasoning. And I know some people that believe in psychological egoism would make the argument that everything we do is in our self-interest. I don't entirely buy into that concept, but there could potentially be some degree of truth in it. Because you can't expect people to expend their time and not get something out of it either. What I would suggest is anybody that runs across this kind of messaging or somebody trying to sell you something, you need to have the honest discussion with yourself of, is what I'm getting out of it actually worth my time? And to some extent, you can attempt to evaluate the character that's giving you that messaging. Like, is this person going above and beyond what they might otherwise do? Like, are they trying to build a brotherhood with you? Are they going out of their way to answer your questions? To maybe give you ideas that'll help you advance forward onto whatever your personal path is? Are they showing you the door that's going to help you actually walk through it? Because in order for men to be meaningfully helping men, I'm of the position that those that are doing better need to have a spirit of noblesse oblige, which, translates roughly as noble obligation. It is a kind of Christian spirit. It's this idea that, I have more and I'm going to help out those that maybe don't have the skills I have, don't have the knowledge I have, don't have the perspective I have, and you're just helping them on their own personal journey. And that kind of self-sacrifice, it's not for everybody. I do understand the people that seek to monetize on this phenomena of when men start to recognize those grains of truth that they feel like they've been searching for their whole life, that they really want to cling to those figures that conveyed those deeper spiritual truths to them that they felt like they've been lacking for so long. But the whole point of this is not to aggrandize ourselves in disseminating truth to people that had been seeking for it. At best, our purpose is to in turn function as a kind of guide for those individuals, because their path is not going to be your path, but you might have things that can help them move on their path, and that's something you try to do of your own volition. So in general, I would say that if you're having to purchase things from that person, it's a red flag, because it decreases the likeliness that they're working from some sense of noble obligation. And a sense of noble obligation is not for every human being. But I look at it this way. I'm a relatively older man. I'm 40. You could roughly consider this perhaps I'm on the back nine of my life. A man reaches a certain point in his development where he understands that the world is no longer really for him. It was for at one point when you were in your prime and you were ascendant and everything was glorious, but there comes a time where your goal is to facilitate the rise of the generation that comes after you. To essentially plant those trees in whose shade you will never sit. And that has to be an ingrained cultural priority in the person doing it. And I would like to believe that in previous eras, centuries, that more people, especially in Western civilization, had a mind to such concepts. But I do firmly believe there's still no shortage of men that are invested in doing what they can to help form brotherhood with these upcoming young men, and in the pursuit of that brotherhood, help not necessarily make them more successful, but pass on what wisdom you've earned, so hopefully they don't make the same mistakes you did, so that maybe their life can be a little better than you had it, and the hope is, in turn, eventually they will do the same. And I think that is a beautiful representation of like what the life cycle of a man should be. Of course, if we have children, it's something you do with your children, but, especially in these times where men have really not been doing so well in the system, that kind of brotherhood is probably more valuable now than it's ever been. But I think I've gone on too long with this. Let's get back to it.
Because I wanted more money, I wanted more respect, I wanted a real path forward, and for a minute, it genuinely felt like I found my people. The more that I consumed his content, though, especially his newsletter, the worse I actually felt about myself, though.
Comparison is the thief of joy. If you are guiding a young man in his development, you should never be cultivating in them a sense that they are comparing themselves to literally anyone else. All of us, when we were born and with the parents we got and the community that was invested in raising us, or that wasn't, some people had a very rough upbringing, you were dealt a hand. And you're going to have to play your hand the best you can, because you're not going to wake up in that other person's body. At no point does comparing yourself to them in any way facilitate your life. That's not to say you can't learn from them. You can't gain insight into what does and doesn't work from them. But if you have a healthy mentor figure or somebody that's genuinely interested in your psychological well-being, they're going to want you to focus on the one thing that is realistically within your control. What things can you do to make yourself better in some way each day? Are you better than you were yesterday? And in the pursuit of becoming just that tiny fraction better, maybe it'll bring some degree of peace to your mind. Because if there's one thing that is truly necessary for a man, other than, of course, having a purpose, it's also being at peace within himself. And that is a hard thing to come by. Simply being wealthy will not necessarily bring you peace. Only the personal philosophy that you've developed for yourself is going to enable you to always allow your mind to be in this state of persistent equanimity that will allow you, with a clear conscience and presence of mind, to pursue your gradual self-improvement. So if you run into a man and he's trying to sell you the image of what he is, as opposed to making it about like, okay, how can what can we do to move you forward? Then it's already an indicator that their intent is not where it needs to be. And I look at it as, by their fruits ye shall know them. The fruits of a mentor that is invested in his mentee, I don't know if that's a word, so I apologize if it's not, but you get the idea. It's going to produce a very different sort of bond, and it's going to create a different outcome for that individual, one where they have a better potential to be happy.
so, so I mean, it's just over and over the message it came back with. He just kept saying, he kept pounding the same thing over and over again. It was just like, if you don't have his money, his cars, and his lifestyle, you are pretty much worthless as a man. And
that feeds into the message of pay me and I'll show you how to make it happen. It's an unfortunate message. It's one of those cases where encouraging men to self-improve, of course, is laudable. So it's not like it's a universal bad thing he's doing. It's just the issue of, can it be done better? Because the truth with how any civilization is going to work, not every man is going to get to rise to that level. But let's say that you never rise to that level. Maybe you end up doing something that is purely humble. There is nothing wrong with a man that does humble, honorable work. If that man can be at peace with himself and he does humble, honorable work and he provides for himself and ideally, of course, for family and children, then I would rate that man's value infinitely higher than, some CEO at a company that doesn't have any sense of noble obligation. Yeah, sure, they might be living a wonderfully hedonistic life. Are they at mental peace with themselves? Who knows? So, you need to be able to provide something that can work for all men, psychologically and in their outcomes. So if he's doing that humble, honorable work, and he's just finding ways to improve himself by a little bit each day, maybe now he's getting on in years and it becomes less about improving himself a little bit each day, and maybe he starts bending that time into helping another young man improve in some small way each day. At least for me, that is the vision of what I think would be a wonderful world for those men that reside within it. It is a cycle that could perpetuate, and it would be glorious. But perhaps I'm overly optimistic.
He would drag you. He was funny, so he would keep you there. It was this push and pull thing. He would drag you down and then hold himself up as the only path back out of it. And so he would tear you down, and then he would build you up and tear you down and build you up. It was this balance of fear and hope, essentially.
But notice that nowhere in that fear and hope, there was no peace. Like, when you look at statistics regarding men ending their own existence, like, it's the sense of their uselessness. And uselessness, of course, comes from a lack of purpose. But purpose is something you assign to yourself. And it can be a very small, humble, minor thing. But that's yours. And you don't have to let people take that from you. I'm reminded of the quote by the American transcendentalist Thoreau. For an impenetrable shield, stand inside yourself. You get to choose what is most important to you. And if your purpose is determined by yourself, and you go about it, even if in the small way, and you draw something from it, your peace is going to be able to radiate out from that. And that peace, combined with that purpose, it'll keep a man alive when others might look upon him and not understand what keeps him going.
And that's what I noticed, because he would keep men just confident enough to keep paying for his program, but just insecure enough to keep coming back, right? And I'm not gonna run through everything this man has said and done, because that's a whole separate conversation, and a lot of that is why I do not follow his content. I'm not an Andrew Tate fan at all. I want you to see. I just want you to have that example. What I want you to see is the model, right? You find men who are hurting, and you validate their pain just enough to earn their trust, right? But you exploit that trust for money, and then you keep them cycling between feeling like garbage and feeling like they're finally on the right track. That's essentially it. And I know that I already know what some of you are typing right now in the comment section. Well, James, how do I know you're not doing the same thing? Fair point. You should be asking those questions.
Every person should be skeptical of the messaging that anybody delivers. Of course, he's going to indicate it for himself. I indicate it for me too. Weigh what they have to say. See how it reconciles with what you already know. Look at their general actions, not just in whatever they're communicating with you. Maybe it's what they communicate with others. See if they're trying to extract resources from you. And of course, there is some irony in delivering this message, because it's making this video. If you're watching it, it means to some extent I've had access to your time. And humans only have a certain finite amount of time on Earth. So by watching anything that I do, you are using your most valuable resource on me, to which I am, of course, deeply honored. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't be skeptical of what anybody says. You can begin to give a person more leeway only once a point comes that, let's say that you're trying whatever they're saying and you're beginning to see positive results from their messaging. Then you can be like, okay, this guy is actually trying to look out for my best interests. I'm getting better from this. Life is great.
Because it was I've had a few people in my comment section since I started doing this a little over a year ago, call me a fed plant, which was pretty funny. I was honored to be accused of being a fed plant. Yeah, so it's a pretty cool thing to hear when you're just a guy making videos from his 2-bedroom apartment. And yeah, I'm a single dad who has been inside the family court system for over a decade, and I'm grinding every single day to stay in my son's life, and I'm trying to not let the system that was designed to break men actually break me. I don't have a course. I don't have a Brotherhood tier. I've got memberships on my YouTube channel. That's pretty standard. I don't have a Bugatti. I rent a 2-bedroom apartment, so I've got bills, I've got child support, I have a parenting time schedule that I follow. So, and if you've seen my previous, here's my living room. This is my living room.
I appreciate men that are genuinely honest about their life, the highs and the lows. It humanizes them, and it also provides perspective on what kind of person you're dealing with. It is odd somebody would consider him a fed plant. I guess maybe I haven't seen that video.
I don't have a studio for this. My living room is my studio, and so it's pretty quaint. So if I'm controlled opposition, whoever is running me is doing a terrible job. All right. But yeah, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I mean, you should question every single voice that you follow, including mine. So what I'm asking is that you just think for yourself, which is one thing that controlled opposition never actually wants you to do, which is to question them. So, but I would say that real liberation makes you need the voice less the longer that you follow it. You get me, right?
As a man, think of when you're younger, you're more malleable. What you believe is going to be more fluid. As you get older, your beliefs about the world do tend to harden to some extent, because you have a combination of your beliefs as you've applied them to practice and the experiences of what has resulted from them. Plus, of course, whatever you've learned from others up to that point. So, I do like his messaging up to this point.
Teach a man to fish instead of just giving him a fish. I'm here to teach you how to fish. And I don't know everything, right? I'm learning on the job too, right? I'm shooting from the hip a lot of the time. And if you've been consuming someone's content for 2 years and you find yourself more dependent on it now than when you started, I mean, I would say that you're not being set free. You're being maintained. And
That's actually an interesting concept. And yes, I've talked about, of course, mentoring, because to some extent his messaging is about exactly that. You mentor an individual, you pass on what you know, they're going to synthesize it with what they know. Over the course of their life, they'll end up on their own path than yours, and they should end up on a different path than yours, even if they perhaps had the same general direction. Uh, in that generality, I do think there might be some value in perhaps having a person that you can look back on and be like, okay, maybe my life isn't going quite the way that I want. I'm going to revisit this messaging because maybe there's something in what I've heard from this individual before that can maybe help me get back onto the right track now. So it's more a case of sometimes you need to revisit what you thought you knew in order to begin moving forward again. It's part of the lifelong concept or practice of reflecting on your experiences and what you know, expanding what you know. But you definitely shouldn't idolize an individual to such an extent that you're just trying to emulate them. You're still supposed to be taking what you can and then treading your own path.
managed. Um, and I have said in the past that hope is dangerous. I think it is. I don't have a good feeling about hope in general, but I would say
Hope, like most emotions, can be a double-edged sword. There are times where it's great, there's times where it's bad. I mean, there can even be uses. I remember when I was in college, I had a fantastic argument with a professor who was trying to get us to sort emotions into good and bad. And I was like, it depends. Because she was like, you're supposed to put hatred into the bad. And I'm like, well, hatred can be a very powerful motivator. Perhaps even superior to love in some circumstances, because it is that strong. It can be a call to action that wouldn't have occurred otherwise. So contextualizing things does matter a great deal.
that this is a cheesy line, but it's true that comparison is the thief of joy. I
Give him your like, comment, and subscribe. I said those exact words earlier.
I feel like crap anytime I compare myself to another YouTuber that's got more views or more subscribers or whatever.
You know, it's funny he mentions that. Obviously there's infinitely more successful YouTubers, and there always will be. Those people are fantastic at what they do, and they deserve all the praise for what they've done. But if I was doing it to be competitive with them, that's like starting a race after others have had this massive, massive head start. So it should never be about comparing how you're doing relative to others. It's, are you enjoying what you're doing? Like, by way of my own example with this, I haven't been doing it long. But if you compare how how I spoke in the early videos, it's clear I'm not very comfortable. But I'm getting a little better as I go. And I hope to one day be able to speak as well as I can write. But don't compare yourself to others. Just enjoy the journey of what you're doing for what it is. So long as, like I said earlier, you're getting just a little bit better as you go, hey, you're doing great, man. Because if you had to compare yourself to who you just were, you win.
But I understand the trap of measuring your worth against someone else's bank account or I don't know, their car collection, whatever it is, whatever you're lacking in that they have. Don't do it, man. Don't fall into the trap ultimately. And I know it's easier said than done, especially now in the consumer age that we live in. But a lot of people, if you see somebody driving around in a Beamer, especially I don't know, like a 3 Series or whatever, they're or these the base model Mercedes Benzes, they're probably more broke than you are. Okay, so
So I'm going to tell my own personal story with this phenomena. So I started lifting weights when I was 18. And in those wild early days of the internet and the general understanding of what the fitness community was like, because all this was 22 years ago, you'd look at these physiques and you'd be like, wow, this is what I can achieve. And at the time, you're younger, you're naive, you don't have a fully fleshed out understanding, realizing, wow, all these physiques were of course achieved with very hard work, but also the usage of steroids, and they might have just been dealt a better genetic hand than you. So you're comparing yourself to the people that achieved the absolute best of the best, and it already puts you in a mindset that, like, okay, well, this is what I'm going for. But then you start training and you're seeing the changes, you're getting the newbie gains, but you're still comparing yourself to these others, and you're seeing that you're getting nowhere remotely close. This, I have the reality. I'm average genetics as average gets, and eventually, of course, you learn, okay, steroids has something to do with it, genetics has a lot to do with it, where are your muscle insertions attached, and so on and so forth. But the more you compare yourself to these other people, it just makes you feel worse and worse. And I remember for quite a few years when I was younger, just thinking, man, I'm small. I don't even look like I lift. And now it's like, okay, well, everybody can tell that I at least have been in the gym a little bit. Over enough time, it will happen. You just might not end up being the people that you compared yourself to. But once my psychology shifted to I'm just trying to get better than I was, it's been nothing but a fun journey. Because I have strength metrics that are better now than I had at like 26. But if I had given into just comparing myself to others, I'd have been so riled up and miserable, because I'm never going to get anywhere near, how the bodybuilders look. I'm nowhere remotely close to any of the elite powerlifters, and I would have probably just quit at some point, because what's the point? Everybody's better. But instead, I found my inner peace with it, and I just enjoy the process for what it is, even accepting that I'm just extraordinarily average.
Be smart with your money. Don't go out and spend money or finance something. Don't pay for something you can't afford just to look a certain way, because that's just going to lead you further into ruin. And yeah, it's not a good financial practice. But this isn't financial advice. I'm just saying. But men do need a brotherhood. That is for sure. I think that is true. Some people say that it's not.
I'm in the men need a brotherhood camp. So I guess it's another personal story. So I didn't grow up with a father. I didn't actually get a male mentor figure in my life until I was actually well into my 20s. And he got to serve as he was a fantastic man. He got to serve as this template. Okay, this is what a man should be like. This is what I should be trying to accomplish. And of course, it's not just the modeling of morals and ethics and virtues and values. It's skills. They're willing to work with you to give you skills. So when I look at the Brotherhood of Men, of course, there's the Brotherhood of Peers, but there's also the Brotherhood of Mentors. And you cannot replace a brotherhood of men when it comes to both developing men, and to some extent it can almost become its own reinforcing purpose for just continuing to do what you do. Because even men that have found an inner peace or are getting better, there's going to be times where things aren't going quite the way they'd like, and that camaraderie can help get your mind back to where it needs to be. So anybody that would tell you a brotherhood's not necessary, absolutely not. Humans are social animals. We benefit from it greatly.
But I think that having that, anytime I've had other men around me to speak to and to vent to and to look up to, and for them to look up to me. That was always healthy. I think that men do need that. And brotherhood between men has never required a monthly fee. Never.
The idea he's talking about, and I'm faithfully delivering on it so far, and I actually intend to the best of my ability to keep it going forward. When people comment to my videos, in my mind, the impression that's like a person throwing their voice into the void. So I want to respond to those comments as much as I can, because in a way it's showing, hey, you're not alone in this void. And even if it's a tiny fractional thing, you would be surprised at how just a tiny measure, even from a stranger, can give you just that little bit of spark back. So if I in some way, by responding to comments, can get people to go, okay, maybe I'll live another day, just see where the conversation goes or something. And that's not to say that I think I'm particularly important or special in some way, but it's the idea that we're trying to make these connections. And in making these connections, maybe the suffering goes down just a tiny bit. And I think that's worth something.
I mean, I understand whenever it's remote, there are a lot of free options out there. I've thought about having that, like this brotherhood where there's like a $5 fee. I've tried to start one before. It was like a $20 fee. That was dumb. Because yeah, I do got to pay my bills, and I'm doing this for a living, so I got to think of ways to make money. I may at some point actually start something that's like $5, but the only reason I would charge $5 is just to keep bad actors out. And if anyone in the community actually does something, I can still take their $5 and kick them out without a refund and have the satisfaction of that. But that's not something that I'm thinking about doing right now. It's just crossed my mind. It's neither here nor there. But either way, you can find Brotherhood outside of me. I don't know. Because it is a way to make money, but also there's just something that rubs me the wrong way about it. I don't know. Because a lot of people in the comment section have asked for it.
You, sir, have at least a touch of noble obligation. If it rubs you wrong, it's because you want it to be in the noble spirit of doing it willingly, because it's simply the right thing to do, to promote brotherhood. So it's actually an indication of your moral character that you feel this particular way about it, because it's kind of a spiritual thing. Your spirit is basically pulling you in a certain kind of direction for your behavior, because there's something you envision the way you'd like things to be in your interactions, and you understand they can only really become that way if you pursue it in this pure spirited way. Ironic, of course, that as an atheist I'm over here talking about spirit, but whatever. Continuing on.
But I don't know. Because the moment that this sense of belonging is gated behind a subscription payment, you are a paying customer inside of a business model. And then yeah, it feels like the entire relationship is built around keeping you just satisfied enough to stay. I don't know. My goal is to be as authentic as possible and to make money, because this is what I do for a living. So I want to be authentic. Of course, I'm not going to please everyone. I'm not going to make everyone happy. I'm going to piss some people off, and that's fine. That's just the way life is. But just in closing, I'm kind of go off on a tangent here, but in closing, the anger and the frustration that you feel when these voices say what you've already been thinking, I get it, man. That energy is real, and it belongs to you, okay? Just use it to build something in your actual life instead of feeding it into someone else's platform. Because men are hungry for real things. I'm hungry for real things. They want to feel heard. They want to have purpose. They want to be a part of it.
I'm glad he mentioned purpose. I went on about it a good deal earlier, but I still rate that the number one thing that helps just give a reason to a person to get up in the morning. But it's good to see it pop up.
Of a genuine brotherhood that's actually on their side. And you can build all of that in your real life. You don't have to find it in someone's paid platform.
The purest version of brotherhood you can manifest in your own life, and I am very blessed to have a few individuals in my life that are this way. You understand that your friendship with these individuals, it runs to such an extent that you know that if something happens to one of them, you are not going to preserve yourself in the attempt to help them. I mean, it's the proverbial shirt off the back kind of thing, but it even goes something beyond that. And you know that they'll extend the same courtesy to you. But I really believe that the only way you can cultivate that is just being genuinely selfless with people. Not trying to make your relationships with those people transactional. Yeah, you do things for them, they do things for you, but you're not really, there's no need to track it. It's a free exchange that flows back and forth because you want to and they want to. Ironically, of course, I'm talking about brotherhood among men, but it's actually supposed to work the same way with your partner as well. So.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to communicate. Question everything, and you don't have to pay for everything. There's a lot of free stuff out there. So, but yeah, I understand the anger and frustration that you feel when these voices say what you've been thinking. That is real. I'm on both sides of it, because I also do consume. I create content where people feel that way based off of the things that I say, and then I also listen to content and consume content where I feel the exact same way. So I'm in the exact same boat as you. So I mean, I would encourage you to do what I'm doing. Start a YouTube channel if you want to. Start a Kick live stream. Get on Rumble. Whatever you want to do. I'm not sponsored by anyone. This is a sponsor-free video. That's all I'm saying. All right. And I'll leave it there. So go ahead.
I'll go ahead and end it there. I don't know what it is. Speaking for myself personally, even from a very young age, like early teens, I had an interest in philosophy. The two philosophies that for some reason resonated with me most strongly as a youth were Stoicism, but also Transcendentalism. And over the course of my life, there's elements from each that I've elected to incorporate into my general outlook of life. Certainly those aren't the only two I've studied. Just there are two that stand out as being particularly instrumental in shaping who I was, at least when I was younger. And of course, what you do when you're younger to some extent is going to inform the way you think when you're older. I did very much enjoy his video. I talked a lot in this one, so I don't know what to say about that. But it might be just a reflection of the fact that I'm very on board with what he said. Be wary of the people communicating bite-sized philosophy to you. To what extent you're going to cultivate a philosophy, whether you're a younger man or even an older man, it needs to be universal in its applicability. It needs to be able to function just as well if life was going great and you had achieved, wealth and success and fame, as if you lost absolutely everything. And we're reduced to the absolute most simple version of life that a humanity can possibly experience. You want to have a personal understanding of life that is able to weather all storms. Naturally, for a lot of people, Christianity serves that purpose too, and it does it quite well. And one advantage, of course, to, those that are Christian is their communities are much easier to bring together via, worship services or just other community events that churches tend to put on. If you're somebody into philosophy, it does tend to be considerably more lonely because, there's not a transcendentalist church, just by way of example. He touched a lot on brotherhood. I spoke about how I think brotherhood, it needs to be a selfless thing. Whether that is a mentor to a mentee, or it is just a brotherhood among peers. Just be willing to give of yourself, and hopefully you'll be surrounded by other people that give of themselves. Because I firmly believe in order for civilization to continue to grow and prosper, you need people that accept that their role in the life cycle is to, I'm going to use the same quote I used earlier, plant trees in whose shade they will never sit. So, in particular, if you can mentor young men, especially young men that have never had male guidance in their life, it is a life-saving service. To the extent that I've got to do some mentoring myself, it's really remarkable because you're watching a young man and you're passing on your wisdom, and they soak it up so quickly, and in the soaking it up, like, you start to realize, man, like, this guy, by the time he's my age, he's gonna be so much better than I was. So if I can do that for that young man, and he eventually becomes even greater than I was at the same age that I was passing this on, and then he in turn passes it on, how much greater do men get over time in that civilization that promotes people being selfless? Of course, some men don't have the luxury of mentoring. If you're a father, you've already got all the mentoring to do on your table that you can possibly manage, because you are guiding that young man through the entirety of their young life. Daughters too, of course, but for the sake of this video, it's male-centric. But other than that, please give him your likes, comments, subscribes if you haven't already. I do like his content a great deal. I've only seen the 2 videos, but I appreciate his genuine honesty. He says that this is what I am, these are my struggles, I'm not trying to sell you an image, this is my authenticity. And authentic people are ones you're far more likely to be able to form some kind of, well, brotherhood with. Other than that, if you liked anything I had to say, and good God, I said a lot, like, comment, subscribe. Have a good day.